Okay, let's turn to Acts chapter 28. Actually, yeah. Okay. Just gonna do a little bit of a part two talk of someone else's talk that I heard at Vancouver camp. Brother Andy's. He talked a little bit about personality, and it was a good talk. And you know, all the one of the biggest testimonies from our new fellowship in Vancouver that I saw was just how the talks are really great from them, and there was just no bitterness or malice or just one hint at just being angry at anyone from their past incidents and all that kind of thing, and even just one-on-one talking with them, there was nothing. It was not like, but you had a quiet word to someone and they were all bitter and upset. It was nothing, not a single thing, and it was really great. And the talks were just very well addressed, because it's all about the word in the end, right? It's not about pointing fingers and all that kind of stuff. It's about moving on, and so that was great. And I just sort of tacking on a few thoughts that I had after hearing Brother Andy's talk. Andy's from the Geelong Revival Fellowship, and I think I said the wrong chapter. Turn to Acts chapter 17. So sometimes, rightly so, we talk a lot about the future of saints and how we're going to be changed and how great it's going to be, and even how we've been changed in this life, as the gift mentioned tonight, that there's an eternal hope, but there's also hope in this life that we have. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the mix between sort of the human beings that we are and what God's given us, the Spirit, and how that works together. And sometimes we condemn ourselves because we don't like ourselves, and just sort of want to look at some scriptures about how that's not really what God wants us to do. And rather that he's sort of picked us out for whatever reason it was, and he wants us to use whatever we have, whatever natural talents for the Lord, and to it talks about proportion of different things and talents that we're given, and that we're supposed to use them and not wait until we're perfected before we do anything for the Lord. So Acts chapter 17 and verse 26. This was a scene in one of the great skits of the 21st century, right? With that Paul. It was in there, right? Yeah. Look it up on YouTube if you're interested. It's high quality stuff. Acts chapter 17, 26. And has made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation. Lord, talking about creation here, about him setting the nations in order and things like that. Verse 27, that they should seek the Lord, if haply they might feel after him and find him, though he be not far from every one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. For as much then as we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the Godhead is like unto gold or silver or stone, graven by art and man's device. And what it's saying here, it's saying a lot actually, but what I wanted to pick out of it was just how he says basically like all mankind is very close to God in the sense of, well, he created everyone, so that's a pretty close relationship, but also everyone is so close to having that relationship with the Lord. And whether or not you call yourself an atheist or choose to ignore God or whatever, you're a step away from turning around and having a miracle in your life and having knowledge of the Creator. And so he says, that for in him we live and move. And it's actually, if you look it up, it seems like they've even identified the poem that's being referred to there from the time before Jesus there in verse 28. You can actually look at the poetry, but he's saying even the people of this world and the artistic and the smart and all that can even acknowledge that whatever we're doing in life, we're within God's domain, and because of him we live and we have life, and whether or not we like it, we're his offspring. And then in verse 29 it goes on about perhaps that people think that God's in something mysterious or mind altering, or like he can't be that simple, that the simplicity that we've experienced, the relationship with God. And I just have to read one thing out because it's just applicable here with where mankind thinks God is. And I'll click to the next thing. So this is from, you see here, 2 hours ago. It's about 3 hours since I took the screenshot. So this is today. And I'm just going to read some points from the article. It's just lighthearted. It's Wednesday night. But it says, at the Zydor Church of Entheogenic Plants in Oakland, California. And by the way, so this is a California story. And if there's some people on Zoom, none of them are from California, so we can speak freely. But California is an interesting place. It's a place where they find new ideas that you wouldn't even think of. And God bless the saints that live there and are like Paul in Athens here. So anyway, the minister here wears a robe printed with cannabis leaves, and during sermons, members are free to smoke marijuana received as a sacrament in an effort to connect with a higher power. So here we have someone, God has to be through some kind of crazy out there thing. In August 2020, the church's operations were interrupted when Oakland police officers raided the building and seized about $200,000 in cannabis, mushrooms, and cash, claiming that the establishment operated more like an illegal dispensary than a religious institution. The church opened its doors in early 2019 as a physical worship center for members of the Church of Ambrosia, a non-denominational interfaith religious organization that supports the use of and safe access of certain natural psychedelics. And the pastor says, or the founder says, that the church has 60,000 members, which is more than some mega churches. To become a member, applicants must complete an online questionnaire that asks whether they work in law enforcement and whether they accept marijuana and mushrooms as part of your religion. It's located in East Oakland and has armed security personnel guarding the entrance. Wonder why. The church does not sell drugs, but instead it charges a monthly $5 membership fee and then asks for donations in exchange for psychedelic products. It's sort of like football tickets. You can't actually buy Georgia football tickets. You just have to donate enough. As many as 200 people visit the church each day to get marijuana and mushrooms. For about a year, the church held on-site services at 4:20 p.m. for anyone who knows what that means, during which Hodges donned his robe and passed out joints. This is what he said, quote, "This is not just an excuse to sell drugs," he told the Chronicle. "This is what we truly believe is the origin of all religion and really what religion should be." So that's California, the latest goings on in California. But it's, to varying degrees, mankind thinks that God is in some mind-altering experience. And yet it's so simple, isn't it? And it's still great. It's not that it's boring or not miraculous, but it's his way, and that's what we're about. So after we're born again, you can kind of look at it two different ways, that we're still flesh and blood, and we get spirit filled, we go home to our families or our lives or our friends, and life goes on. And I guess you could say in one way life doesn't change that much. You still got to go to work, you still got to eat, but in another way our life is completely transformed, and it says that in the word that we're quickened, we're brought to life. We were dead, now we're alive, and we're spiritual entities. We're part of the kingdom of God, and since God is a spirit, we have this spiritual relationship. And so you can look at the same thing, this born again experience, in different ways. And I think that's because, like I often say, we're in this transitional period of before Jesus returns. We're in this interesting period of being in the flesh but having the spirit. So I want to talk about the first one there a little bit more tonight. And so it says in the word that we're in these earthen vessels, but we're still useful to him. And what Brother Andy's talk at the camp, the Vancouver camp, and if you're interested in those talks, you can go to the Vancouver Fellowship website and you can view the camp meetings. But he sort of talked about our personality and how it can be destructive, and how we have to realize that, particularly before we're saved, of course, but that God can use it for good as well. And I don't think, when you think of a personality, I don't think there are any bad personalities. There are personalities where you can let it, can use it in the wrong way, or you can do destructive things with it. And you can do that with any personality. I mean, think of all the calm, well-spoken cult leaders that have led people to their death over the years. I mean, any personality can be destructive, and any personality can be positive. You got, in society, we have the hotheads and the entrepreneurial types like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs that, if they weren't that way, perhaps we wouldn't have the technology we have now. You've got the teachers, the listeners, and the people that help you with mental health. We got problem solvers and the technical people. So you've got all these personalities, and they all have some good to offer society. And so let's turn to John chapter 20. And you can't choose to, when you get saved, you can't sort of escape from your personality. You can escape from your sin because God's made a way of escape for that. But you can't choose to not have a personality, because if you did, you'd then have a different personality and you'd still be stuck with the personality. So better to understand it, understand what the Lord's will is for you, how to use it, how to work for the Lord, and get on with it. Actually, I got a couple of slides. Oh, yeah, I was going to talk about, I actually culled the Lot's wife thing from the talk, but I had to leave in the salt and pepper shaker, the Lot's wife salt shaker there. And then just we all love Larson. It's not important, but if you can read it, fine. The 4 personality types. So you can look at these things in the New Testament, these sort of intangible things like the heart. So there's Greek words, cardia and nous. I won't pronounce that one, psyche, representing the heart, the mind or will, the conscience, the soul or life. And these are kind of all things that we're born with. And so what does the Bible say about them? It's helpful to understand that we all have these different things. They all represent different things. The heart kind of representing your emotions or your inner feelings, and all those other things. Having the soul or life. When you look through the New Testament, we'll go to the next slide. it actually, it doesn't always talk about just replacing them and discarding them. It talks about words like purifying and renewing and making the conscience, good and holy, and saving the soul and saving life. And it's talking about sort of rescuing these things and changing them and molding them. And I guess Julie's testimony works in a little with this, right? Because when we come to the Lord, we don't just turn into zombies or drones or robots without personalities. And the Lord, he does change us in miraculous ways. And then it's sort of like, we've all discussed this before. It seems like there's an instant change many times that changes us in very tangible ways instantly. And then we sort of have these 10 or 20% things about us that may take longer to change, or maybe they stick around forever, and maybe they remind us. Paul had this thorn in the flesh. We don't know what that is, but some people think it's a personality trait. People think it's a healing need or something. But he certainly mentions what it did for him to keep him humble, and maybe that's part of why that is. That we keep being human, and we keep walking in the Spirit to overcome the sides of the human flesh that get in our way every day. And thinking about an example of this, and it's about Jesus and his wounds here. So John chapter 20, verse 25. Before this, it talks about, how Jesus appeared to the disciples and he showed them his wounds, but Thomas wasn't there. And then it says that the other disciples, verse 25, therefore said unto him, we have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, except I shall see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. And after 8 days, again, his disciples were within, and Thomas with them. Then came Jesus, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, peace be unto you. Then saith he to Thomas, reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing. And Thomas answered and said unto him, my Lord and my God. Jesus saith unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed. And it's just interesting that here's another example of a remnant from almost a previous life or an event. Jesus was rescued kind of like we were. He was raised from death to life, just like we were. And I was thinking about, why did he still have these wounds or marks on him? Why did God raise him from the dead, which was a miracle? But then the easier miracle would be to get rid of the wounds, And so if we think about it, well, first of all, what was it, 40 days between when he rose and when he rose from the grave and when he ascended to heaven. So without getting too graphic, his wounds would have probably not been neat scars. They would have been somewhat messy, perhaps, I don't know. But so why did the Lord leave those there? And a few reasons you could think of is to prove to the unbelievers and doubters that it was Jesus, leaving the wounds there that would have looked very serious, even though they would have healed over some days, would have made people realize, yep, that's him. And like Thomas here and the other disciples. So proving it was still Jesus and not an imposter, to prove he had overcome death, because, the wound in his side was sort of the death blow. That was the one that perhaps ended it. So sort of seeing the wound in itself, you could see the wound that caused him to die. And seeing that would have given rise to the realization of the greater miracle, that he was risen from the dead. And so, and the other thing is, like, him being raised from the dead is a major miracle, of course, and so wasn't particularly necessary for God to demonstrate a more minor miracle in this situation. And so actually leaving them kind of had more benefit, and this is just thoughts, obviously. He was not yet glorified. He hadn't, risen back to heaven yet at this point in time. And so, he wasn't fully perfected yet in the sense of his physical being. And so it may be that, God left those marks on him to be that ongoing testimony and to disprove the doubters and things like that. And, think of us. I think that's why the Lord, when he saves us, leaves us with this interesting balance of the flesh and the spirit. And when you're walking in the spirit, it's a very perfect balance, if you like. And what it does is it confounds people in the world that can't believe that you have a peace when you're going through a certain trial, or confounds them that you don't have any concern about what's going on in the world. When they can see you're just a normal human being, but there's something in you different, that's the power. And that's kind of why I called the talk The Right Mix, because the right mix of people walking in the spirit is a powerful thing for our testimony. So what are the remnants of the bad things? Like, we just to wrap up what I just said, it could be personality traits. It could be difficulties. Many times some things that we struggle with before we come to the Lord are, whether it's physical or mental, there are things that can actually be, mostly healed, if you like. I mean, obviously, if you've broken something, it's healed or not. But there are things where the Lord can work, and then kind of there's that little remembrance of what you were like that may hang around, like I was saying with Paul. And so this reminder that keeps us honest, it's a personal thing, like it was to Paul, to keep us humble, to realize that, well, if we want to keep the old man down, we got to walk in the spirit. Otherwise, he'll rise up and we'll be in trouble. And then the other sign is a public sign, as I was just saying, that we're fallible humans. We can mess up. We could be doing something else tomorrow, but through the power of the Spirit, we're not doing that. And we are giving our lives to the Lord, and he's using us in amazing ways. 1 Peter chapter 4. 1 Peter chapter 4. And verse 10. As every man has received the gift, even so minister the same one to another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which God gives, that God in all things may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. And so he's saying here, if you're going to do something, there is a choice to minister, to speak and all these things with the Lord behind you and speaking his desire and words, or doing something in your own understanding and with your own motives. So every time we have that choice to minister unto each other, and it says there about good stewards. So like steward, I guess, is someone who's didn't look up the definition, but would seem to be temporarily in charge of something. So, as long as we're walking the Spirit, we're temporarily in charge of this thing, this power that God's given us, and we have the ability to demonstrate grace to people. And so, yeah, as I guess wrapping it up, there's an example here. I don't know if anyone's welded. Bruce, have you ever welded before? Yeah, I haven't, but my dad did. And it's sort of this, to weld, you need to get the right heat to melt, steel and metal and have it cure and all that sort of stuff. So you got this crazy setup of two gases oxygen and acetylene, I think it's called. And you got to turn them on in the right order and ignite them in the right order. And then you got to get the mix right, so that it's the right mix that'll create the right heat so that you can basically create metal and create joins and welds and things like that. This is a few different combinations of these gases, but the one they say that really gets the job done is it gets to about 3,200 degrees Celsius to be able to heat and to do those things. So I always watch my dad do it and know when the little bright blue bit was right. And so it's sort of like us in the Lord, is we aren't meant to just completely discard ourselves. There's probably religions that do that. I know maybe it's those monks that go into the mountains and live there forever and don't say anything and don't do anything, you know, just completely switch off the human side. And that's not what the Lord's called us to do. So we'll finish in 1 John chapter 3. So 1 John chapter 3 and verse 2. Beloved, now we are the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. So it's okay that we're not spiritual giants now. We're not super spiritual beings. If we were supposed to be, it wouldn't have this verse here. I mean, it says here we don't even know what we're going to be like when he returns and when he changes us. So there will be a transformation in the future, but that hasn't happened yet. And so right now is the time to get the right mix, to move on in the Lord. And so, you know, we've talked a bit about, you know, when we come to the Lord, he doesn't change our personalities, but he does change our character, and he does make good those decisions that we would ordinarily make poorly. And he wants to use our natural talents for the furthering of the gospel. And so we can't deny that, and we can't sort of get condemned about our personality or who we are, but rather look to him and see how he wants us to be used. And I'll leave it there.